Good day, dear friends. You are on the Ruslan Belov channel. We continue to analyze the situation on the front lines daily. Let's open the map and start with the operation in the city of Sudzha. Yesterday, there was a lot of contradictory information. For example, a telegram channel belonging to a fighter from the AID group denied reports about the pipeline. Then, a major telegram channel even claimed it was fake. But in the end, everything fell into place. Video footage of the operation was published, confirming that Russian troops successfully carried out an airborne landing in Sudzha. The footage in the Telegram channel showed fighters moving along the gas pipeline, an impressive sight. Now let's look at the pipeline. According to the map, it runs north of Sudzha, past Martinovka, and further toward Kursk. Russian troops entered the pipeline before reaching Martinovka while simultaneously launching an assault on the village. There is conflicting information regarding Martinovka. Reports overnight suggested that Ukrainian forces, AFU, had retreated from there to Sudzha. The Americans, on their map, which we are currently using, shaded the village in grey, which they typically do when Ukrainian forces lose control over an area. However, in the morning, reports surfaced that some Ukrainian soldiers were still hiding in basements. For now, we will stick to a conservative assessment. Fighting in Martinovka is ongoing. Regarding Sudzha, the airborne landing via the gas pipeline occurred from this position. The troops then advanced to the northern part of Sudzha, a 12-kilometer journey. They moved in a crouched position because the pipeline's diameter is 1.4 meters, making this feat an act of sheer heroism. The battle then shifted to the northern part of the city, mainly in the industrial zone. In addition, airstrikes targeted and destroyed bridges not only in Sudzha, but also in the surrounding areas. For instance, the bridge connecting Kazachya Loknya and Kazachya 2 was destroyed. This was done to split the Ukrainian forces into isolated pockets, cutting them off from one another. This tactic worked. Yesterday, we observed complete chaos and disorganization, especially at night, as footage of a destroyed Ukrainian convoy in Sudzha clearly showed. The Ukrainian forces tried to escape Sudzha, but ended up at the destroyed Fab Bridge, where artillery struck them. All 9 vehicles were destroyed. They drove there because they didn't know the bridge had been blown up, meaning they lacked communication and coordination. Situation north of Sudzha. The situation for Ukrainian forces is even worse north of the city. Russian troops advanced 6 kilometers in a single push, effectively encircling the northern AFU grouping. Ukrainian forces were pushed out of the last street they controlled in Lebedevka. Moreover, after taking Lebedevka, Russian troops advanced another 6 kilometers and reached the railway. They captured 2 settlements, Kubatkino and Zazulevka, both strategically important, perhaps even more so than the others. Success on the eastern flank. Russian forces launched a powerful strike and crushed the Ukrainian garrison in Cherkasskoye-Porechnoye. Even the American map has marked this area in red, confirming Russian control, as video footage with a flag has been published. Additionally, Russian troops took control of Khutor-Kositsa, located beyond Russkoye-Porechnoye. This entire area, 14 square kilometers, including a large village, fell under Russian control in just one day. This effectively sealed the fate of the entire Ukrainian grouping in the north. They are trapped with no way out. Now let me explain in detail. Due to the 6-kilometer advance from the west and the capture of Cherkasskoye-Porechnoye, Ukrainian forces in the north are in a complete disaster, with no exaggeration. Specifically, the AFU troops in the Kazachya Loknya area, who failed to retreat, are now trapped. The road between Kazachya Loknya and Kazachya Loknya has been cut off. The railway line has also been severed. The only possible escape route is a small corridor between Kubatkino and Ivashovskoye, just 3.5 kilometers wide. However, this area consists of rough terrain and a forest strip, making passage nearly impossible, unless on foot. Even then, it is an open area, meaning artillery would strike before anyone could reach the forest. Beyond Cherkasskoye-Porechnoye, 2 small villages remain, Pravda and Ivashovskoye. It is clear that today, Russian forces will continue their offensive. After Cherkasskoye-Porechnoye, assault units will push forward, and today's battles will take place in these villages. As a result, the corridor will shrink to just 1 kilometer. Well, A 1-kilometer wide corridor is essentially certain death. This is within the range of small arms fire. Thus, this entire northern area, 60 square kilometers, has been cut off from the main section of the Kursk front. What were the Ukrainian forces thinking when they stayed in Malaya Loknya? They could have retreated to Kazachya Loknya yesterday. I don't know. Most likely, they simply had no communication and didn't realize what was happening. At the very least, there were reports yesterday that the AFU had lost communication. Situation in Kazachya Loknya. Yesterday, multiple videos showed the AFU hastily evacuating equipment from the village, particularly artillery. Logically, the infantry should have followed, but as of this morning, I have no confirmation that the AFU has completely withdrawn from Kazachya Loknya. So let's remain cautious and note that the village is still under AFU control. It's better to make an error in this direction than to prematurely declare the village liberated only to later find out that it isn't. Successes in the south. Beyond the northern Kursk front, there were also achievements in the south. 1. The Russian army reclaimed fields covering 4 square kilometers near Ulanok, lost during the AFU offensive in February. Second, Russian forces took control of the Kolmaki hamlet. 3. They entered Makhnovka, where battles were already taking place in the village center yesterday. Thus, Sudzha is now blocked from 3 sides, the east, north, and south. From the east, Martinovka is contested, preventing retreat in that direction. From the north, fighting is ongoing in Sudzha's industrial zone. From the south, battles are underway in Makhnovka. The only escape route is westward, along a road completely exposed to crossfire from both sides. Additional operations. On another section of the front, Russian forces launched an offensive, though the results were more modest than in other areas. They entered the Melovoy hamlet, west of Kurilovka. Fighters from the 810th Brigade attempted to advance into Guevo. Summary of the first day of the Russian offensive. Based on the most conservative estimates, Russian forces took control of 6 settlements and 37 square kilometers of territory, conducted an airborne landing in Sudzha, encircled the AFU grouping in northern Kursk region, gained momentum in Sumy region. Look at Novenkoye. It is under Russian control. Russian forces are building up there, which even Ukrainian sources confirm, despite their earlier denials. Situation in Basovka. A local fighter reported that aerial reconnaissance is ongoing over Basovka, with artillery strikes targeting identified AFU strongholds. Drone strikes have also been used. No one has entered Basovka yet, but there is movement through the forest belts from both the north and south. However, this action is on a much smaller scale compared to operations in Kursk region. New reports. Just before recording this update, we received fresh information. As expected this morning, Russian troops are clearing the pocket north of Kazachya Loknya, encountering little resistance. The only location where the AFU is fiercely resisting is Malaya Loknya, which is already surrounded. Martinovka, mass surrender of AFU soldiers. Everything is unfolding as expected. Those AFU soldiers who wanted to flee did so at night. Remember the convoy of vehicles that was reportedly destroyed near the bridge around midnight. It now appears that there was no destruction, just an organized retreat from Martinovka. And it went exactly as planned. After the bridges over the Sudzha and Loknya rivers were destroyed, escaping by vehicle became impossible. Those who managed to flee packed into cars, reached the bridge, and then crossed its ruins on foot. Meanwhile, before realizing no one was left, we destroyed 3 vehicles. The rest surrendered this morning, following the pattern seen in Cherkaskoye Porechnoye. The same situation occurred in Kosytsa, as reported by the Akhmat resources. The offensive in Kursk region continues. Now let's move to the Siversk direction. For a long time, the Siversk front remained nearly static, with control lines unchanged. Russian troops occasionally launched attacks, but significant success only came after nearly 2 years of failed attempts. This front has long had a reputation as cursed, marked by false reports, prematurely claimed settlements, and costly assaults against fortified Ukrainian positions. Battle chronology in Siversk area. By early 2024, Russian forces captured Veseloye but struggled to advance north. In the summer, they pushed Ukrainian forces out of Razdolovka. By September 2024, reports surfaced claiming that Vyemka, Ivano-Darievka, and key positions along the railway to Siversk had been taken. However, Vyemka was not actually captured. This false report became one of the key incidents leading to internal investigations over misleading battlefield updates. Another direction of the Russian army's offensive was the village of Verkhnekamenskoye, which serves as a gateway to Siversk from the east. As of now, Russian forces have approached Verkhnekamenskoye from the south and have begun flanking it from the north. However, no claims of full control over the village have been made. After the leadership change in the southern military group, countless inspections, and the removal of several field commanders, the situation has begun to improve. The nightmare of Belogorovka. Another major problem on the Siversk front is Belogorovka. Over the years of the war, it has become synonymous with hell. Once troops enter, they don't return. Belogorovka has been declared liberated multiple times. At one point, some soldiers even planted a flag near the river on the outskirts of Grigorovka. Then, on October 23rd, false reports even went as far as claiming the liberation of Serebryanka. Despite all these setbacks, the front at Siversk, at great cost, has come back to life. Slowly but surely, thanks in part to public scrutiny and the proper response from oversight bodies, the situation is improving. However, much work remains to be done. Special operation through the gas pipeline. Now, some interesting details about a special operation by Russian forces involving a gas pipeline. Yesterday, news spread across the internet that a group of Russian fighters infiltrated the rear of AFU positions in the occupied part of Kursk region by crawling through a section of the Urengoy-Pomary-Uzhgorod gas pipeline. Initially, this claim came from a small channel, and many of the so-called proofs were actually archive footage from a past real operation during the storming of Avdiivka. However, the story instantly went viral. Major media channels picked it up, then Ukrainian sources claimed they had eliminated the sabotage group, and soon the legend of the pipeline made it all the way to the global press. A textbook example of information warfare, this is a classic case of how a story can take on a life of its own. People accept it as fact without questioning its authenticity, even in the absence of concrete evidence. However, throughout the day, one of the main points of criticism was the bare unbelievability of such an operation. But is a gas pipeline assault technically possible? Why not? Is it dangerous? Yes. But so is storming tree lines across minefields under drone surveillance, where even retrieving wounded soldiers 50 meters away is impossible. Is it difficult? Of course, crawling for kilometers through a pipeline with an oxygen tank is no easy task. But history is full of even greater feats, building bridges in icy waters, hauling heavy artillery through impenetrable jungles, or Hannibal leading elephants over the Alps. Does it sound like a suicide mission? Perhaps, but it's certainly no worse than 2 years of repetitive frontal assaults on Belogorovka. Regardless of the actual role this gas pipeline played in the liberation of Kursk region, this story is easily one of the most spectacular psychological operations of the entire conflict. That's all for today's Frontline Updates. For now, I'm signing off, wishing you a great weekend.